Hi, I'm Tara, and welcome to Les Do Books. Today I'm joined by Erin Dutton, who's going to share her journey with lesbian fiction. Erin is the author of 14 lesbian romances. The latest is Wavering Convictions, and it's out everywhere from Bold Strokes Books. Welcome, Erin.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So how did you first discover lesbian fiction? Do you remember what that first book was?
So I don't remember the exact first book, but I had always been a reader, and I was the kind of kid who wrote stories in school. I actually learned to type on a typewriter. I'm that old. And so I would write stories like during class and then type them up at home. But it wasn't until after I moved to Nashville in 1998 that I discovered the gay bookstore, which I call it a gay bookstore because that's exactly what it was. There was one or two shelves of lesbian fiction, maybe a movie or two, and the rest was all stuff for the guys and rainbow stickers and rainbow jewelry. And that was what it was back then. So the exact book, I read fast, so it's hard for me to remember the first exact book, but there were, the authors at that time for me were Radcliffe, Karen Callmaker, Jerry Hill, and Frankie J. Jones. Those are the kind of ones that stand out. Midas Touch by Frankie J. Jones was an early title for me. And I think the first Radcliffe book I ever read, it might have been one of the honor books, but I don't really remember. I read fast, and so at that time I was there every couple of weeks just to see if they had something new on that one shelf.
What did it mean to you to find that shelf?
I mean, it was amazing. I think it's probably similar to a lot of people's experience because as always being a reader and I loved romance, I was reading straight romance at that time. And again, I was in the library devouring everything I could find, but none of the stories spoke to who I was. And when I first moved to Nashville was kind of the time that I was trying to figure out how to come out to my family. I had known for myself for a while, but somehow I felt like it was going to be easier to come out to them from 1,000 miles away than living under their roof. So having those characters to connect with was so important at that time.
Mm-hmm. So when did you start writing, and what were you kind of reading around that time? Was there anyone that inspired you to get started?
So I started writing in 2005, like seriously trying to write lesbian fiction in 2005. I had just come out of a breakup, so I had like all this kind of new free time on my hands. And, so I started writing as sort of therapy from that maybe. And then I sort of told myself and two friends so that I could be accountable that I was going to try to make this into something that was novel length and held a story together. And once I had done that I would, submit to a publisher and see what happened. It was kind of trying a new direction, some big changes.
Mm-hmm.
So I was reading Radcliffe at the time. I was reading Kim Baldwin. This was, I think, just a couple of years after Rad started Bold Strokes. And so when I was trying to decide who to submit to, I went to my bookshelf. And, at that time there was no ebooks, so I actually had a bookshelf. And kind of looked at what publishers were publishing the stuff that I liked to read and the stuff that I wanted to write. And then I sought out their publishing guidelines, and Bold Strokes was at the top of the list. They were the first ones I submitted to, and 2006 I signed a contract with them for my first book. So,
and it was kind of happily ever after that.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, I make it sound easier than it was at the time, but I mean, I recently had a conversation with Rad in P-Town where we talked about this, and I still remember that first conversation with her. I had sent in a manuscript at the time, and she emailed me and said she wanted to have a conversation about it, and she called me and we talked on the phone. And maybe part of the reason I remember it is because my parents were in town from New York when I had that conversation, so I kind of got to share that excitement of a new direction with them.
So are there... I'm trying to think how to ask this. So you said you love to read romance. Are there any particular themes or tropes, or what's your auto buy? What's going to get you to read a book right away?
I really am attracted to the fake relationship trope, and I don't know why, because it's either done well or it's done horribly, and so I either love it or I'm disappointed. But for some reason, that one always gets me. I'm like, ooh, is it going to be one of the good ones, That one will get me. I write a lot of first responders romance, so I do like to read those as well. That one's always hopefully this is a good one.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the friends to lovers as well. I like that there's built-in history there, so you can already kind of feel that they have this, past. I like that.
I like that too. It also has that really interesting tension from, is this going to be the best thing we ever did, or is it going to blow up our friendship?
Right. And then there's, I have friends who have kind of ended up really good friends for a long time after trying a relationship and it didn't work. And then sometimes it, like you said, it just kind of blows up a friendship, and it feels like there's more at stake there than just we met a month ago and maybe it didn't work out,
Mm-hmm. And more at stake actually than even with the enemies to lovers, because so what if it doesn't work out? They were enemies.
Exactly. That's a good one too, though. There's so many that I think it's obviously, if there's an author that you can rely on, then you're going to try whatever they write. But with new authors, I do think it's reading the blurbs and kind of figuring out if that's a trope that you like.
Yeah. I feel the same way about the fake relationships, and I think it's actually been a really good year or two for people who like that theme. And some newer authors doing some fun things with it, like casting Lacey. Did you read that one?
I did. That was a good one.
Those two women, I don't know. I couldn't put that one down. I sometimes wanted to shake them because I was like, what are you doing? But she just did that tension really well. So
yeah.
You're listening to The Lesbian Talk Show. TheLesbianTalkShow.com, your hub of podcast information.
So you've been a part of the lesfic genre for quite a while.
Yeah.
And so you've probably seen quite a lot of change happening in the last, almost 15 years. How do you feel about that change that's happened and where we're heading as a genre?
I think it's really an exciting time for the genre. Like I said, even when I started writing, there were no ebooks. And I kind of remember the point where that started to change. In those early contracts, I remember, there were ebook clauses in there, but I remember having a conversation being told, well, we're going to be doing ebooks, but it's really just going to be a small percentage of the sales. And, we're going to see where it goes. And if you look at where that's grown to now, there's so many people. I go to some Pride events here in the South in the summer with D. Jackson Leigh and Donna Ford, and we get people who come into the tent and they're like, "Well, I love books, but honestly, I'm totally digital now." So they're not buying books from us on the spot, but we're kind of steering them toward the ebooks and the kind of specials that you can find in that area. So it's interesting. The technology has changed so much, and audiobooks are kind of starting to move in a different direction. There's more to choose from there with Audible and everything like that. So
do you have have you been given a sense from Bold Strokes about how you sell in digital versus physical books?
Digital is, for me personally, digital is outselling print books right now. And I have been given a sense. We get royalty statements. I have the numbers to look at and kind of compare. And it is kind of always interesting to look at that too, because even just comparing book to book, you can kind of see trends. My second book, Fully Involved, was my first firefighter romance, and is still top 3 every quarter for me. So wow. Yeah, it's crazy, but And that's usually, it's going to be mostly ebook sales at this point, or a lot. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I would say it's at least 60-30 ebooks.
How did For the Love of Cake do?
For the Love of Cake did well. You know what? That's another trope I kind of like, the whole reality competition type, because I love to watch those TV shows. So that was a fun one to write, because the research was like, telling my wife that I just have to watch the Food Network for hours in order to do research for my book was kind of interesting, but it did well, and it still does well. And that's my favorite. That one's ebook and audiobook and print. So
yes, I thought the audio was mostly what I like. AJ Ferrero, she has a super likable voice, but I don't know. I think I like that book so much. I'm gonna fangirl at you for a moment, I guess. So I like that book so much because it has that reality show thing, but it also brings in the celebrity thing. Because some reality shows, there aren't really necessarily celebrities, but I like that it brought that in, and it brought in the age gap thing, and single mom thing. Like, it just, I don't know.
Yeah, that was kind of the age gap thing was not something I had really done before. And I don't tend to write a lot of celebrities. I probably looking at my characters, they're more kind of like everyday people, I guess. So it was a different kind of thing to write. It was fun.
Mm-hmm. So are there any books that you've read recently or in like the last 6 months or whatever that have had you excited that you think other people might want to check out? So
right now I'm reading make sure I say it right. 3 Reasons to Say Yes by Jamie Clevenger. Really good book. I'm almost done. I'm actually probably going to finish it today. It's really good. And she actually just won Goldie for it, I believe. So that's a good one. Gosh, there's so many. Because like I said, I read fast.
There's not a limit. I'm not going to hold you to like a list.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look at what I've read recently so I can...
And for people who are interested, there's actually a follow-up to that that's just, by the time this podcast is out, it will be out. I forget what it's called, but if you go on the Bella Books website, it's going to be Jamie Clevenger's latest one. And it's a follow-up on the 2 best friends in that book. I think their names are Kate and Mo.
Yes.
It's their book where they get together.
Okay, I didn't know there was going to be a follow-up. That's exciting. So now I have something else to put on my to-read list. I tend to have like kind of reliable other authors that I know I can go to for good books. Aurora Ray never disappoints, and she writes a lot of those. Her P-Town series is so good, and I love P-Town, so it's kind of like it feels like reading that series feels like you're on vacation a little bit because it's places that I'm familiar with, and that's a good series that I've read recently. And kind of like sort of out of my normal realm of what I read, Brey Willows did a Furies series. Have you read that?
No.
It's a trilogy, and it's kind of like a fantasy. It's very cool. It was a very interesting read for me, and it's not something I don't read a lot of fantasy, but it's weird because every time I do venture to that, I love it because I also really love D. Jackson Leigh's Dragon Horse trilogy. So the few times I've sort of let myself venture that way, I've found something really interesting.
I haven't read that one yet either, although I read most of D. Jackson Leigh's contemporaries, and like she's a fantastic writer.
Yeah. I mean, I would give the first one a shot because I really, like I said, I don't read a lot of fantasy, so it's not really my thing, but I loved it.
All right. So where can people find you online if they want to connect with you?
Probably mostly I'm on Facebook. I do have Twitter on my phone, so I'm on there. I check that as often as I can, but Facebook is where I'm most accessible, I think.
That is all for this episode. Thank you so much, Erin, for joining me.
Thank you.
I'm Tara, and you've been listening to Les Do Books. You can email me at tara@thelesbianreview.com with your questions or comments, or if you're an author who's interested in joining me on this show to talk about the lesfic you love or the trends that have you interested, please let me know. If you've enjoyed this episode, please check out the show notes where you'll find a Patreon link for The Lesbian Talk Show or visit patreon.com/The Lesbian Talk Show. Our patrons get exclusive content like bonus podcasts and author interviews that no one else gets access to. To find this and many other great shows, all you need to do is search for The Lesbian Talk Show on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, or Spotify.